Hello and welcome to the BYU Library Family History webinar. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Olivia Tuller and I'll be your host for this webinar. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You're welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments, insights, and questions. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Our next webinar is on March 21st with James Tanner. He will be giving a presentation on how I use AI for my own genealogy. If you would like to access a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Bob Taylor on United States research with the Family History Guide. Before we begin, here's a little bit about Bob. Bob earned his BA degree from Brigham Young University and MA degree from California State University, both in music education. A career change led him to instructional design and technical writing, where he has worked for large technology corporations such as Novell, Intel, and Western Digital. At Intel University, he redesigned key training courses for employees and managers worldwide, as well as teaching management courses in Washington, Arizona, Oregon, California, and Utah. He has authored many online and written learning systems, helping others accelerate learning in technology, music, and family history. Bob has been a featured presenter at RootsTech. He has also presented at the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, Pikes Peak Library Colorado Fair, Riverton Family Search Library, and the BYU Family History Conference, in addition to numerous family history fairs in the United States. And we'll now turn the time over to Bob if he's ready.
Okay, thank you, Olivia. And it's a pleasure to be here. And we're going to be talking about how to do United States research with the Family History Guide. First of all, we just finished a wonderful time at RootsTech a couple of weeks ago, and James Tanner was there presenting on AI. So the webinar coming up should be a very interesting one for sure. All right, so we are currently looking at the homepage in the Family History Guide. It's thefhguide.com. It's a free site, of course. And today we're going to be focusing on United States research, as I mentioned. So we'll go up to the countries menu here, and you can click United States, and then you go to the United States page. So one thing I wanted to mention is it's kind of tied into RootsTech, but the Family History Guide Association is now an official learning partner with the National Genealogical Society. And what that means is that we will be providing them, their chapter members, chapter organizations and members with training using the Family History Guide on a wide variety of research topics. So we're excited about that, to be able to work with the National Genealogical Society. Okay, so in this webinar, what we're going to do is walk through, I guess you would call them, some of my favorite parts and areas of the United States pages in the Family History Guide. This is kind of cherry picking in a way, but it's got some great and useful articles, videos, databases, and so forth that should prove to be pretty useful for your research. And your experience, of course, will vary as you explore the pages in the Family History Guide. You'll find lots of different articles and videos and so forth that you can explore and take your time with and find and learn quite a few useful and important things about doing United States research. Okay, so across the top here, we have a series of goals, we call them. Those are like learning categories. We're currently in goal A1, U.S. records. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is scroll down a bit here. You see a list of these states. We also have state pages, and we'll get to those a little bit later on in the webinar. All right, so first of all, we're going to scroll down to record types, record basics, and so forth, and record information. What I've done is I've put some dark stars next to the items that we're going to be focusing on. You can actually do that if you have an online tracker account in the Family History Guide. You can darken these stars to illustrate, whatever you're interested in or things that you've read or watched. Okay, so before we go to evaluating there's one here that we want to go to. It's from ldsgenealogy.com. It's genealogy record types. So let's click on that one first. This is actually a pretty good rundown of the basic record types that you will need to be familiar with when doing United States research. So I'm not going to take the time to read all of the text, obviously, but I'll give you just a quick overview of the different types of essential records that you will be encountering and using in your U.S. research. Birth records, and some U.S. states did not record birth records until the 1900s, something to keep in mind. Marriage records also came into being and into play a little bit later on. Death records. And in all of these different vital records, you may find mentions of other family members or additional dates, places, and so forth that could be valuable. Cemetery records. And remember that not all people who were buried in a cemetery actually have a current tombstone marker, so that's important to know. Census records from 1790 all the way up to 1950 so far, and future ones will be released later on. Newspapers and obituaries. And these are a relatively recent phenomena. They didn't occur or get into popularity until the mid to late 1800s. Church records. These may predate vital records, so they can be very valuable. Probate records, dealing with lands, deeds, wills, and so forth. They often list names of relatives of the deceased, so they can give some additional supplementary information there. And they were some of the first records kept in newly settled areas, so keep that in mind as you're tracking ancestors who may have migrated across into western portions of the United States, or even the early colonial ancestors coming in over from Europe. Land records, deeds, grants, plat maps, other records related to land. City directories, very useful, and keep in mind that the city directories are usually published with information from the year before. So 1935 city directory has info about people living in the city in 1934. And you can find all sorts of interesting information about a person's occupation, home address, name of their spouse, name of neighbors, and so forth. Military records, there's a wide variety there. Compiled service records are actually very handy, and we'll talk about an example of that later on. Histories and genealogies. Lots of towns and counties created histories of their local areas, and these may have clues. They may mention your ancestors or family or associates or neighbors of your family members or ancestors as well. Immigration records, quite a lot of variety there. You'll get passenger records, naturalization documents, other immigration information. They can give names and ages and so forth. And then we have miscellaneous records. We call them school records, tax, court records. These can provide additional information there. So again, that is in step number 2 there under record basics, ldsgenealogy.com, genealogy record types. All right, let's scroll down just a bit here. And 5 things you should do with every record. Okay, this is from an ancestry video, and there's an info button over here. You can click the info button basically to get the chapters, sections, and you could go to any one of these links to jump into the video at whatever point these reference. So just for our illustration's sake here, 5 things you want to do with every record that you encounter. You want to source the record. So if it has anything pertaining to your ancestor, you want to create a source for it and attach that into your tree. You want to examine the image for additional clues. Sometimes there's, you could say money left on the table or information left on the record that you don't see on first examination. So you want to examine it carefully for additional clues. List the points, actually write them down, type them in, the information that's covered there, and perhaps some questions that may come to mind. Because you see some information, that may trigger some questions in your mind about why did this particular thing happen, or what other pieces could be involved here. And then file your notes using logs, software, and so forth. Okay, let's scroll down to choice B now. And to illustrate here, we have a button up here with 3 minus signs up in the header area. Whenever I click that, you can actually see the different choices. It's kind of like getting a summary of what's in this particular goal. So we were dealing with United States, understanding United States records and their uses, the record selection table, and getting acquainted with other types of records. So we're in choice B right now. Let's take a look at the record selection table, or also known as the United States Record Finder. So we'll click that. Some of you may be familiar with this. If you're not, it's a good thing to get familiar with. So the record finder basically is a large table, and you can see, looking at the different columns here, if you're looking for this type of information, then the second column has the best records that you're going to want to focus on for searching first, and then alternative records that may be helpful as well. So you can see column B and column C, or A and B, whatever, however you want to label them. The second and third columns have that criteria of most important and secondary important. Also in this table, the records are sorted from most reliable, generally speaking, down to less reliable in terms of sources and reliability of the information. So in vital events here, you can see for births, marriages, deaths, and so forth, you've got a wide variety of records here. This helps you kind of screen and channel your research efforts so that the temptation is to just kind of jump on any record that you might see or be interested in or whatever. But if you can funnel your efforts towards the best records and most reliable first, and then go through the hierarchy of what might be searched next, that will be very helpful. Maiden names and family members. Parents, children, spouses, living relatives. Immigration and country of origin. Here we talk about the immigration dates, where you can find those. And where do you find the city or country of foreign birth? This can be very interesting as you're trying to track ancestors who emigrated from overseas. And this gives you some good primary and secondary type sources. Residences and locations. Where do you find a residence? The census record is a good opportunity to find that. So there's lots more here, and you can spend time looking those over. Very useful information there. Okay, next up, that was the record selection table. We are going to go over to goal A2 here, location and geography, up in the top area here. And I'm going to click the minus box here, and you can see we have these choices. Devise a strategy for locating your ancestors based on where they lived. Use maps effectively. Use city and town resources effectively. And use county maps and county resources effectively. All right, so first of all, we're going to go up to this one. Devise a strategy for locating your ancestors. And we're going to scroll down a bit here. And there's a heading called Researching in Locations. All right, so first of all, we'll take a look at this Family History Daily. You can see the abbreviations here: Family Search, LDS, Family History Daily, so forth. So we're going to open that article up. Why getting to know an ancestor's location can be a research game changer. So I'm just going to highlight some of the headings here. Start by knowing exactly where your ancestors lived, worked, went to school, and worshiped. So a few tips for researching here. Oops, I scroll past those. So you want to do a general internet search of the history of an area. Become familiar with the history and location. Those two facts, location and chronology, are going to give you some really good solid basis for research for your ancestors. Make sure you've identified the correct town or geographical area before researching. And this one says use the Family Search Standard Finder. This is actually a little bit out of date. What you want to go for here is Family Search Places. So that's an update to that. And you can see alternate names. Those could come in handy because place names will change or have variations as you're doing your research. You'll discover that. And then search genealogy pages that are specific to the area where your ancestor lived. And then, very important, take time to understand the institutions, trends, and events that impacted these locations, because that will give you additional clues into what was going on in your ancestors' lives, what may have influenced their decisions to move, to get married, to change jobs, to lots of different things. Okay, we are going to go down to choice B now. Scrolling down a bit. Use maps effectively. And the Family Search Wiki has a really good article on United States maps. So we're going to open that up here. And this article is quite extensive, as are some of the Family Search Wiki articles. But just to give you a flavor here, here are online resources to a lot of different map collections. So you can take time to do the browsing here yourself. What kinds of information would you find in these collections? Well, you've got atlases, boundary change maps showing the shifts in borders of townships, counties, states over time, census maps. These are listed alphabetically here. Where do you get atlases and other things? So we won't take the time to go through all of these, but this is a great reference, United States maps on the Family Search Wiki, that will give you lots of clues on finding maps that are going to provide you additional information. Now we'll go down to a section called Using Mapping Tools. Here we go, using mapping tools. So we may think of maps as being, oh yeah, that's the old school stuff, and it's been around a while, but there are some modern applications and twists for mapping information and data. And one of those is using map overlays. So down in step number 3, you learn about historical map overlays. This is from thoughtco.com, historical map overlays for Google Maps and Google Earth. Let's click that. And it's really interesting that you've got all of these different possibilities. There's a David Rumsey map collection for Google Maps. Historic MapWorks, it should be historical. That's my grammar police hat coming on here. Anyway, historical Earth overlay viewer. They have a viewer for overlaying current locations onto historical backgrounds or historical maps. Scotland historical map, and it goes into different countries and so forth. So this is a good way to find out how to use map overlays and how they can help you connect the past with the present in your research. All right, so down to choice number C, city and town resources. One of my favorite tools is city directories. So this article from Ancestry.com has been around a while, but I think it's very applicable. So we're going to open that one up. 6 things to find in city directories. So obviously you're going to find your ancestor and other family members. You'll also see streets and maps, churches and clerics. And here's an example of listings of churches and ministers, pastors, and so forth. Cemetery information, the lists of cemeteries near to where your relatives may have had their home. Advertisements, these are kind of fun, and these list an honor roll of perhaps your ancestors as well. Historical information, sometimes pictures, and these can be quite extensive. So those are 6 great things that you can find in city directories based on where they were published and when they were published. All right, now we're going to skip over to goal A3, regions and states. So let's close up the choices here. And basically this area helps you do research not in specific states, but in broader regions. So the Midwest, and lots of links to videos here and articles. The Northeast, and this is quite extensive because it covers New England in depth. There's lots of colonial and New England research tips and videos and articles, databases here, military records, lots of other things. So we won't go into the details for that, but in that goal A3, regions and states, remember that there's lots of generally applicable information you can find about different regions of the United States when you're doing your research. All right, hopping over to goal A4, timelines and histories. And we have two choices here: use timelines and histories effectively and explore local histories in your research. We're going to skip down to choice B here. And one thing I should mention is a lot of these goals in the Family History Guide have introductory videos, and these are usually pretty short. We've gone by a couple of them that are just about 3 to 5 to 6 minutes long. This is a 3-part series here by Miles Meyer. He's our education director for the Family History Guide Association. We have a part 1, part 2, part 3 video on adding social history to your family history. And Miles did a presentation at Roots Tech that was very effective on this subject as well recently, of this last Roots Tech. Okay, so we're going to scroll down to, let's see, they go past it. Histories, town and county histories listed by state. Here we go. So we're going to open that link. And this site here has lots of great information. You can choose a state that you're interested in. For example, I could pick Illinois. And we're looking for county and town histories. And here, for example, is Adams County. And we could open that up, 1869. And basically, this opens up Google Books. So you could start scrolling through this book and seeing information from way back, listing prominent citizens, the size of towns in the county, historical events, and so forth. So Google Books is great resources for finding histories of counties and towns. And you can find lots of links at that website that we just showed you there. Town and County Histories. That's on a site called learnwebskills.com. All right, skipping to B1, vital records. Let's open that one up. Here you've got an introductory video of about 3 minutes, 54 seconds. And as I scroll down here, this step says, learn more about United States vital records. Okay, and it's got an Ancestry Academy video that's 4 minutes and 33 seconds long. But there's also a wiki handout and there's a quiz. So when you read the wiki handout here, you could actually click this quiz and you could start at the beginning here. And you can, here's just some instructions and so forth. So basically you can take a quiz on what you've, oh, I should click start quiz. Here you go. So what is not a type of vital record? And I'm guessing that a property record is not a vital record, and correct, and so forth. So you can basically take quizzes on some of these Family Search Wiki articles, which may be helpful and interesting to check what you've been learning. All right, B2, this is for birth records. We're going to go close here. So practical sources for finding birth records and alternatives. All right, in A, we scroll down a bit and we see a Family History Daily article, 6 uncommon places to find a missing birth date for your ancestor. And I'm scrolling down through here, and there's lots of different places. Old Town Histories, family pedigree books, compiled genealogies. Remember, we're looking for missing birth dates. places to find them if we've tried the traditional approaches and just haven't come up with anything. Here are some examples in town history. Confirmation records for various religions, funeral home records, and here are some examples of birth in a funeral home record. You may not think, you may think be thinking more about the death event and the information associated with death, but they also can have birth information as well. And poorhouse, hospital, asylum, criminal records, and so forth, which may, like this one, just happen to have penned in information about the birth date as well. So those are 6 uncommon places. So one of the fun things about the Family History Guide is it gives you a variety of basics and not so basics, and you can kind of flip back and forth depending on your perspective and the types of things you want to find out. All right, we're going to skip over to B4, marriage records. And I'm going to go down to choice B and scroll down a little bit more. And in marriage indexes and alternative records section, there is Explore the Western States Marriage Index. So if you have ancestors that lived in the western portion of the United States, this is a great database to be working with here. You can search by groom or bride in all states or just some states in all counties or some counties, looking for marriage records there. Again, that's the Western States Marriages record database. It's special collections in family history from BYU, Idaho. Death records, B5. So in choice A, I'm going to scroll down a bit, and we get to legacy tree article, death certificates, both a primary and secondary source. That seems interesting. So we're talking about death certificates here. And as the article explains, a primary source is one created as close to the actual event as possible, with participants in that event providing the information. The secondary source is created after the event and by individuals who are probably not those directly connected with it. So a death certificate could have both types of information. It could have a doctor's sworn statement. It could have information by relatives about the birth, which may or may not be as accurate. So interesting combination, primary and secondary source for death certificates there. Okay, goal B6, cemetery. Choice A, there's an access genealogy link here. So records by state, U.S. cemetery records by state on access genealogy. So we're going to click that, open it up. And as we scroll down a bit here, you can see on the left-hand side, all of these different links to state cemetery records here. So we could click Arkansas, for example. And we get all of these different by counties and so forth. So that's a good resource to be aware of for cemetery records by state. Very easy to use. All right, now we're into the census area here. So goal C1, census records. We're going to go down to choice B. And in choice B, down a little bit farther, there is an article about census, here it is, census non-population schedules. And that may be an unfamiliar term to some of us, but let's look at this article by Alice Childs. And as she explains, they're pretty handy to use. They deal with some non-traditional ways of getting census information. So we've got agricultural schedules taken in these census years. They list the farm owners and details about their farms. Manufacturing schedules created in 1820 and 1850 through 1880 census records. You can get a sense of where your ancestors may have worked in different manufacturing places. Mortality schedules For the year prior to a census enumeration, you can find information about people or those who died, including you may pick up some clues about, for example, some children who died in between censuses that you may not be able to track, but the mortality schedules would give you some good information there. And there's others as well. Census by decades. All right, we're going to close up the choices here just so you can see that this goes from 1950 all the way back to 1790, census year by census year. And there's links to articles and videos that you can use to get more information about each of the census decades. Up here before that, you see some general things like census headings and census questions asked. We're going to click that link, census questions asked, from all the different census years. And this takes us to the United States Census Bureau page. And over on the left, you can select a decade, for example, 1900, and you get on the general population schedule, that's the main census form, you get these types of questions. So number of dwelling, home in order of visitation by numerator, number of family in order of visitation, the name, relation to the head of the family, color, race, sex, date of birth, and so forth. Quite a few questions. There's like 28 listed there, as well as an Indian population schedule. So that gives you at a glance the types of questions that you could potentially get answers to before you go in and start delving through the various census records themselves. Now, immigration. Goal 1, immigration records. We're going to go down to the records section in choice A, and item number 6 here. Find additional resources for tracing indentured servants. This is something we don't think about typically. I happen to have an ancestor who was an indentured servant who actually came across on the Mayflower. So on this Price genealogy website, we can click that. And we see immigrant servant database. This is the largest one. And you get all of these different links as well. So these are links to particular sources that will itemize info for indentured servants, apprentices, slaves, and so forth from quite a few different references and resources. So this is a good page to review for databases and tracking those ancestors who might be indentured servants. D2, passenger. So in D2, we're going to, in choice A, we're going to go down to 10 things to know. This is in tips, item number 7. Ancestry.com, 10 things to know when working with passenger lists. Let's click that. And number 1, dates. And you'll find when particular dates are relevant and important in immigration and passenger list history. The more details you know about your ancestor or the arrival, the better chances of finding them in a passenger list at ancestry.com, although that applies to others as well. Timeline, you can create a timeline for your ancestor's arrival. Passenger records may provide clues for other records, including census, death, and so forth. And you can link those together. Name games. So how did names change after arrival in Ellis Island, or did they not change? Search tips and so forth. How to find additional family members. Canadian access. Sometimes we think that an immigrant ancestor to the United States had to come from Europe to the United States, but in many cases, they went to Canada first and then crossed over into the United States. Some passenger lists are multi-page, so be sure to check additional pages for those as well. And then there's lots of, in this next step, there's lots of additional clues that you can get, such as codes in passenger lists, listing of the last permanent residents, and quite a few other things. So passenger list can be a lot of fun and very helpful in your research if you know where to look for the clues. Goal D3, other records. We're going to scroll down. This has to do with early American and colonial immigration. Back in British colonial America, they would call it. So we're going to scroll down to item number 8. And there is a free book called Colonial Families in America. I'm going to open that up. This is on internetarchive.org. And this is a really handy website. If you're not familiar with the Internet Archive or archive.org, you should check it out, because as we're looking right here, we're looking at this book, Colonial Families, and it's got some great information about the early families in British colonial America and later the United States. And most of these books you can download for free, you can print them, save them, and so forth. So it's a pretty good thing. So check out archive.org or the Internet Archive when you can. All right, military records. E1. Down in item number 6, we won't take the time to watch this, but I just want to mention that AAC, AncestryAcademy.com, they have, in my opinion, some of the best short videos for family history. They're professionally done and really good research and information, well delivered. So take the time to explore those AAC videos for important information. Also, we have the NARA access to archival databases. I'm going to click that. And again, we're looking for military records. So in the National Archives, we can find all of these interesting links that we can searchable databases for military records. And you get the approximate number of records there, such as different awards, enlistment records, prisoners of war, and so forth. And you can search them right on the NARA or the National Archives databases there. So the Family History Guide has links to articles, to videos, and don't forget databases. They can be very helpful and help you find information that you wouldn't find on Family Search, Ancestry, MyHeritage, Find My Past, etc. E2, military by conflict. So here we've got, I'm going to close choices here. Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War I, basically all the major conflicts. And you can click one and open it. You have an introductory video to go through and learn about the basic principles for research for records in that particular conflict. And then you've got great links to articles and videos to help you out as well there. Okay, we're getting to the last section here, other records. So F1 is religious or church records plus travel and miscellaneous. So in choice A1, there's a Family Search handout. Let's open that up. This is Family Search U.S. Church Records class handout. Okay, so this is by Jill Shoemaker from the Riverton Family Search Center. So it talks about the types of church records, determining which church your ancestor attended, where to find church records, some additional links there, and what happens if you can't find church records. So this is a helpful introductory article for church records in the United States. Let's go down to choice B, travel and migration records. And here's another Family Search Wiki article, U.S. Migration Internal. So let's open that up. And it has lots of information about trails and routes and so forth, and the importance of migration research and records. I'm going to scroll down to near the bottom. And this section called pre-1850 migrations. So this is kind of a hierarchical way to do things. So for example, if your family was in Alabama, you could see routes that would take them to Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Maryland. So it gives you a way to link one state and other states on pathways that were commonly accessed by the waterways or the roads or trails from different states. So this can be pretty handy in giving you a sense of where the migrations were likely took place. And then the towns along those migration roads are good places that may be helpful in providing you clues about where your family settled, migrated, traveled, and so forth. F2, land, probate, tax records. Okay, down, here's land records. Down in choice B, we have a link to the BLM land records, the Bureau of Land Management land records. So they have a general land office records site. Let's click that and open it up. And here you can search for land records for your ancestors 3 different ways. By the type of record, you can fill in these search choices here. You can also search the documents by location on a map, and you can search your documents by identifier if you know some of the IDs of the document and you're looking for them. So Bureau of Land Management has a tremendous amount of records easily accessible there to help you with your tracking your ancestors via land records. F3, court. Okay, court records are not something that all of us are maybe familiar with, and sometimes they're a little tricky to use and to get into. This website here, Random Acts of Genealogical Kindness, I love that title, RAGK, has a research guide for court records. So let's open that up. And in the middle, you've got some basic information about court records, as well as land, wills, financial, and so forth. Court record books, how to find them. Then on the right, you've got links to state court records, and you can explore any of those. And back in the center, you've got information for colonial courts back in the day, court records, legal, published court records, and so forth. And there are some genealogical hints as well for those court records. F4, newspapers. So in choice B, we're going to scroll down a bit here. And in newspaper collections, one of my favorite sites for newspapers is Chronicling America. This is free and it's very extensive. They've got digitized newspapers all the way back to the 1700s and 1690, even if you want to go back that far. So you can do advanced search for all the digitized papers, select the different directories, and zone in on what types of search criteria you want to use there. And keep in mind that for these newspaper articles, you may find information about an area you're looking at somewhere else. And for example, I was looking for ancestors in Southern California, and I found an article in Northern California that had a lot of information about them because it was a newsworthy item to be printed. So broaden your search span and you'll be able to find some really interesting things on Chronicling America. So A5, archives and libraries. First of all, in A1, we've got a cool article by James Tanner, How Do We Find Records in an Archive? This is on his Genealogy Star blog site. And if I scroll down just a bit here, so he points out the difference between archives and libraries. library, you see books and books and rows of shelves and so forth. But when you go to an archive, you might find an office with few evident resources visible, and you might feel lost. So there's an important need for doing as much research as you can so that you know what you're looking for as you visit an archive in person, and then get help from people at the archive to help you narrow down your search for the materials you're looking for. And there's a tremendous amount of information in archives and libraries that's not available online anywhere. So at a certain point in your research, it's going to become important for you to be familiar with libraries and archives to make good strategic choices about the types of information that you're going to be going after, kind of down the paleological layers or strata, if you will, where you've got online records, census, and so forth that are at the top that are easily accessible, easy to use, down to the other records that you would find mostly in archives and libraries. Okay. So that, oh, one more here, U.S. libraries and repositories. This is a family search wiki article. And you've got lots of references here. If you're looking to locate archives or libraries, this is a great place to do it. It's sorted out by state and by area alphabetically. So that is United States repositories, meaning basically archives and libraries, as well as museums and other institutions. Okay, now that we've gone through that, a couple things about the Family History Guide that can help you. We're going to go up near the top here, and we've got state records. So I'm going to go to California to show you a few things there. So you've got information here, are all these different goals. You could explore these with links to articles and videos and so forth. You'll notice these lightning bolts up here. These are quick links. So if I click this goal with quick links, I could scroll down here and I could go immediately, oh, FS Family Search California Birth Index. All right, one click and I got there. You notice I didn't have to wend my way through Family Search. I got right to what I was looking for. So quick links are a very handy and useful way to find records when you want to access them. Also, there is a link to California counties. So at the bottom of the page here, you have not only the family search, here's the legend here, not only family search, but you have Ancestry, Linkpendium, Genealogy Inc., US GenWeb, and Genealogy Trails, and you can pick any of those counties such as, or any of those links such as Linkpendium, and this happens to be a wonderful resource for county research. So all of the counties in every state, you've got 5 or 6 variations of places, and each of these sites has a different flavor or focus for what they will bring to the table for your research. All right, let's go back up here. One thing I wanted to mention is we have practice exercises. So, for example, you see this green dot here, record search practice. I click practice example. So Ichiro Yabu was born on this date. Now use this quick link here, California Birth Index, to answer these questions. Oops, I need some hints. So I click the hints and I think I'm ready for the answers. And there's your answers. We have probably about 400 practice exercises throughout the Family History Guide for different states, countries, and so forth. So this can be very valuable to you. All right, in tools, don't forget that we have a vault. So we have all of these additional articles and videos. If we're talking about immigration and we want to learn more about Ellis Island, here are videos and articles, passenger list, videos and articles, over 2,000 additional resources on this very long vault page that will give you additional information for doing research in the United States on all these different topics here. And one last thing to mention, class outlines. These you would find in the trainers menu. Okay, so the reason I'm bringing this up is Class outlines can be used by trainers, but they can also be used as a self-study method. So I'm going to click class outlines here, scroll down a bit. These instructions here help you set up the basically the slide deck, which just has one slide, but it has speaker notes. And you would use the speaker notes to point you to different places in the family history guide where you can find the information you need. It's almost like this webinar right now could be kind of considered as a class outline, because I've just been going through spots in the family history guide and helping you see where to find interesting pieces of information. But there are all of these items here, learning to do research. Let's scroll down to the United States section so we can see more there. So here we go. We've got United States research. We talked about records. So all of the different goals here, vital records, female ancestors, death records, immigration, the things we were covering, you've got these ready to go built-in self-study methods that you can use to teach other people with a very minimal amount of preparation, or to learn yourself. So you can explore those as you go. It's been my pleasure to present this webinar on United States research with the Family History Guide. So now I will turn the time back over to Olivia. If there are any questions, feel free to ask. I don't have a handout for this particular webinar, so maybe that answers that question. But all of the information is right there in the Family History Guide website. So, oh, that does remind me though, I do have a personal paper or document that I used to prepare this. So if it's useful, Olivia, I could send that to you and you could post it. Would that be okay?
Yeah, for sure. If Corinne says, so when I open up family history, then on the search button, do I ask for family history guide? How do I find this?
Oh, to find the family history guide, you're going to use this web URL here, thefhguide.com. We are not directly linked from Family Search. We're indirectly linked, but it's kind of hard to find where the link is. So this is your way of getting in, thefhguide.com, and it's free. So that's the important thing to know. And then to get to what we were talking about today, you would go to the countries menu across the top and select United States. And that takes you into the United States pages that we were discussing.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We hope you will join us for our next webinar, which is on March 21st with James Tanner. You'll be giving a presentation on how I use AI for my own genealogy. A recording of this webinar will be made available next week. You can view that on our YouTube channel or on our website. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email us at fh_webinars@byu.edu or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you and have a wonderful week.